hi participants. I welcome you all to our next session, which is a very interesting session of today and the trending topic in intellectual property market. So the topic is measuring the continued impact of the novel coronavirus on the global intellectual property market. We have our eminent speakers joining in: Toby, patent attorney, T and Howe, IP attorneys. We have Smitha Chandrashekar, legal director, HARMAN International. And we also have one more speaker who can join up. That is Ahmad Saleh, partner head of patent and designs, R&D and innovation, Tamimi and Company. And these overall session is sponsored by CSC Global. And you can also get the chance to meet the CSC Global during the networking time and also during the later part of the day during their presentation. So over to you both, Toby and Smitha.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to all the participants. And first of all, thank you, Conference Gorilla, for having provided this opportunity to share a few thoughts on this particular topic, which is actually a quite a vast topic, I would say. Measuring the continued impact of COVID-19 on the IP market. Right. So before we actually get into the topic, I'd like to quickly, sort of set the stage. By the way, we would be joined by Ahmad, who, I guess will be here shortly. And we also have Toby. So, introductions are already being done. So I won't spend much time on that. In terms of background, so, when COVID-19 actually hit the world, nobody knew how exactly it would impact all the markets, let alone the IP markets, right? So it has been very disruptive for many businesses, and some businesses have actually thrived, and some are doing okay, and some are on the verge of, stabilizing themselves. So the impact in terms of COVID-19, I would say, has been very, very varied. The first market to hit from an IP perspective was obviously the healthcare, particularly the pharma sector, because these are the guys who made good use of the opportunity, because that was the need of the hour. So pharma companies sort of started investing heavily on the drugs and clinical testing and so on and so forth, right? So they were the front runner, and obviously, as a result, the IP market had a heavy impact, right? So all the IP related aspects actually came into play, with the pharma industry rapidly after having paced themselves up. And then there were these other industries which actually caught up, because the COVID-19, many companies actually started letting their people work from home, and then as a result of which many industries actually, which probably didn't exist prior to COVID-19, actually started tapping this potential. And, many new industries also came up. And we have seen some good improvements in the fintech sector in particular. And when there is an improvement, you have all the other bad aspects too, in terms of cybersecurity issues, to, the potential impact the cybersecurity issues has had. And then you also have the hackers who really made gold, in this period, right? So, a lot of industries actually, like I said a while ago, have really, in one form or the other, COVID-19 has had an impact, and so has their IP. So with that in the background, let's move on to the actual topic, which is measuring the actual impact of COVID-19 from an IP perspective. So this, I would say, my dear friends, is actually a quite a difficult in terms of actually measuring. Reason I say is that it can be qualitative, it can be quantitative. I don't know. There are a whole bunch of factors which actually determine the measurements. So basically, we've tried to categorize the measurements into three categories, right? Obviously, the first thing is, from a regulatory perspective, I think we are going to discuss a little bit about how the regulations have changed or evolved, and what sort of an impact the regulations have actually had on different sort of markets, in the world. And Toby in particular is an expert on China IP, laws, in fact. So he would shed some light about that. And next, in terms of the measurement, we would see, from a corporate perspective or from a business perspective, how exactly has this impacted, the IP portfolio of each, especially for product companies. It's had a huge impact because, I mean, every day there have been changes. So there have been new patents which are being filed, and then new trademarks have come up. And so is it in the case of infringements, because everybody is hungry right now, right? So if that is the case, then infringements tend to occur, and there is some bit of overlapping. As a result, it results in a litigation. Arbitration, IP arbitration, in fact, has picked up quite a pace, and that's gaining traction as well. So that's the second aspect that we would discuss. And of course, third and last but not the least, we would be sharing some insights on the future of the current situation, right? I mean, because COVID-19 is here to stay, in some form or the other, because of late we have seen different sort of variants which have been mutating and whatnot. So this will obviously have an impact on all sorts of businesses. So I guess with that background, great, my friend Ahmad is here. Hello, Ahmad. We have just begun the session, and we have done some introductory portion. With that, now I would be handing over the session to Toby and Ahmad to talk a little bit about the regulatory aspects, from an IP perspective. Where is it we are in terms of the regulations, what were there, what changed, and what sort of an impact they've had. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Smitha. Smitha, I don't think we need to do a introduction of ourselves, so I will just go
Sure.
right
Yeah.
into the topic.
Yeah.
Regarding the regulatory developments to the IP law you talk about, unfortunately in China there have been too many of them. And if you want me to go over all of them, I'm afraid I would have to hijack this entire session. So I'll just
No, the
pick up
highlights would
something.
do. Yeah.
Now, pick up something relatively important. First is, of course, with respect to the changes in patents. Some of you may know that China has passed the new Chinese patent law last year, and there are some very significant changes introduced in this new Chinese patent law. Most of the changes were brought about by the US and China trade agreement signed in January 2020. And the major significant changes are introduction of the drug patent linkage, patent term adjustment due to the Chinese Patent Office delay, and drug patent term extension. Further, partial design has been allowed. These are several topics that may be of importance to specific industries, particularly the drug industries. But one big thing that would affect everyone is the increased compensation for patent infringement and ease to prove patent infringement damages. These two may sound encouraging to a lot of foreign companies because they believe themselves would be the ones suing the Chinese companies for infringement. But remember, in China, in fact, there are a lot more Chinese patents owned by Chinese companies. So that means when you are going into China, into the Chinese market, you open up yourself for being sued. And with these two significant changes, that means if you are found to be infringing, you will face a lot more damages than before. I will talk about that more if necessary. There are some also other major changes with respect to patents, but the general change is that it becomes easier for people to obtain patents, particularly for software-related inventions. So I do not want to hijack the entire session. I will pass over to Ahmad. And if you want me to talk about other topics with respect to changes of trademark and copyright, I'll be happy to fill these gaps later.
Actually, why don't you go ahead, Toby? Because I think, trademarks and IP is like the bread and butter for most industries. So why don't you touch about it a little bit, and then I guess probably Ahmed can talk about it from a, Middle East perspective. Thank you.
Sure. The trademark law has also been changed in 2020 last year. And the major change again focuses on infringement aspect. That is the ease of proof of damages and increase the amount of damages and introduce punitive damages for trademark. The same are true for copyright. So the general direction is to increase the damages award that could be received by IP right owners in China. This could be very encouraging for IP right owners, but as I said, this could be very problematic if, as a foreign company, is going into the Chinese market and then found themselves to be sued for IP rights infringement.
Right. Thanks for that. Ahmad, do you want to, take over and shed some thought on, the regulatory developments in the COVID-19 era, from a Middle East perspective, please? Thank you. So, Toby, do you want to, I obviously know that you can talk from a China perspective, but I'm sure similar developments would have taken place in the in most of the countries around the globe, given the China situation, and I'm sure they're following the bandwagon. So, do you mind touching on some of the other countries as well, if you're okay with it? If not, that's okay.
Sure, no problem.
Cool.
One thing that people may have in mind is about the reason there are a lot of suggestions to forfeit IP rights because of the pandemic. But a lot of people may be referring that only. Okay. A lot of people may think that these are only related to pharmaceuticals and vaccines, but in fact, if you look into what a lot of countries are suggesting, they are targeting, in fact, everything, including face masks, machineries, you name it. And I have to say, okay, is that we are talking about because of the pandemic, we are asking all private companies to give up their intellectual property entirely? Is that what we are asking for? I think that's a very dangerous direction. Why? Because I will take patent for an example. A lot of people believe patent exists to protect the interests of the patentee and applicant. I can say this is too far from the truth. The patent system, in fact, is here to benefit the general public. How? By forcing the companies to disclose their invention to the public so that the public could practice an invention after the patent has expired. What does it do in general? It helps to reduce double effort in reinventing the wheel. That's the major purpose. And in fact, if you look into that angle, I can dare say I cannot find another legal system that is so hostile to the general user, that is the patent applicants and the patentee, other than the patent system itself. You file something wrong, you are dead. You disclose something less, you are dead. You disclose something earlier than you should, you are dead. You have insufficient support, your patent is dead. How hostile can that be to the patent applicant? So in fact, the patent system is here to help the general public. And in return, we are now asking us to abolish the IP system entirely. I don't know what's the rationale. And to be honest, do you think abolishing the IP itself would help to get vaccines around? I can tell you no. Definitely no. Because when you are making, no matter it is a medicine or a vaccine, you need a lot more than a patent to do it. Just waiving the patent rights will get you practically nowhere if you have ever been in the real industry of making drugs. That are some of my few thoughts. What do you think, Smitha?
Perfect. Thanks, Toby. I can't agree more with you. I mean, it's not just, the pharma or the healthcare industry, that we're talking about, right? I completely agree with you on that front, because there have been, a lot of other industries. For example, AI, I guess the previous speaker was talking about it. That's another industry which has thrived because, sitting from home, people would, sitting at home, people would want to, experience everything. They don't want to miss out on anything, right? So you've got, what in terms of developments, I would say, even from an IP perspective, I think all these online platforms which were unheard of probably a while ago now are thriving today, right? I mean, and then all these other supply chain, the entire supply chain, which supports one particular industry, for example, those are thriving as well. I guess we've had Ahmad back. So Ahmad, do you want to talk quickly about the regulatory developments in the Middle East region, and we can move on to the next topic? Thanks. So I think, I mean, taking a cue from what the conversation that we were having, the next aspect would obviously be from a commercial and a compliance standpoint. What is it that the corporates in particular need to bear in mind? Basis the impact the COVID-19 has had, because I guess from a commercial perspective, like we discussed a while ago, there have been lots of commercial impact, right? I mean, lots of new patents are being filed, and there have been infringements, and which has all obviously resulted in litigation. So from a strategic standpoint, Toby, I'd like to hear more about what is it that the big powerhouses of the world need to bear in mind, given the situation. And also please also share your knowledge or perspectives from a compliance perspective as well, because compliance from an IP perspective I think is a vital component. Reason being, I mean, people tend to ignore compliance because of the commercial impact that it has, but if you don't, in the long run, again, you are the one who's going to suffer, right? So that's where we are. Over to you, Toby.
I'm afraid that's the dilemma that we are always running into. Well, to be honest, what should the companies do to protect their IP effectively? I'm afraid it's very simple. Go back to the basics. Go back to think about what your IP is about, what your IP does. For example, what your patent application is trying to protect, whether it fits with your business strategy, and you may need to evaluate that periodically after some time, and so on, to see what you need to file additional applications, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, what I find is a lot of my clients treat patent attorneys like they're firefighters. They only come to us when they are already in serious trouble. I have to say that's too late. To be honest, as a patent attorney, I love these situations because I can charge my clients big money and give them very little results, and they cannot complain. What patent business can I be into? But I do not like those. I can see, okay, if you come to me maybe 3 or 4 years earlier, we start talking in the very beginning of your project, I can do a lot more in a much more effective way. The only problem is, do you have the awareness to do it? And then do you have the willingness to do it? And I find, unfortunately, a lot of my clients, they don't. They just treat us, they're firefighters. They run into problem, they come to us, ask us, can we fix that? And we can tell them, a lot of cases, yeah, we can, but not in a very good way, and the chance is slim, and we have to charge you a lot. But they are then stuck. They are already in a very bad situation, in a very bad business position that they have no turnaround. But by contrast, if they come to me earlier, like for example, if they are developing a product, and during the development stage we find out, hey, look, have you done the freedom to operate for that particular component? Oh no, okay, let's do it. We find out, oh, wait a second. In fact, you may have used something that is patented by someone else. We can start to obtain a license in a very early stage, and usually the license will be a lot cheaper than you already have rolled out your product with the infringement issues. That's one example. So again, let's go back to basics. If you don't do it, my take is that, in fact, in my field, what I find is you always end up paying more or less the same amount of money. It is you pay it less now, and then pay more later, or you pay more now and then pay less later. What I find is, if you adopt the later model, that is, you pay more now the overall amount would be a lot less in a lot of cases, particularly if you get yourself into infringement trouble. No matter it is patent, trademark, or copyright.
Absolutely, Toby. I think absolutely right. And being a GC myself, what obviously I always advise the management. As you rightly pointed, Toby, to put it in your own words, go back to the basics, right? I mean, I do understand because GCs like us are the ones bridging the gap between the management and the external counsels, right? So we understand it much better because any potential impact that not doing something would have on the company is going to cost very dear. And I think people like us are best placed to assess the situation, right? So I think in terms of strategy, in terms of compliance, or the IP portfolio itself, we need to be vigilant right from the start, because if you're not vigilant, and if you don't know what's happening in your own company, then I don't know what it makes me wonder why you're in the business that you're doing, right? Because I think whatever field that you are in, and if you need to protect your IP, you would need to start right at the beginning, else you will be left out, and it'll come biting you in one form or the other, right? I mean, it need not be infringement as such, it need not be litigation as such, but there are various other forms, like for example penalties, right? I mean, for non-compliance can actually cost you dear, right? And also
Product
if
safety.
yeah, absolutely, safety. And also, I mean, who knows, if you haven't done your homework and if you haven't protected your IP, and if some other competitor or a similar company is also simultaneously working on the same thing, and if they file a patent for their particular invention, then you have lost out on the race already, right? So where are you going to go? I mean, you would have invested in that particular business heavily, and then you're left with nothing, you're back to ground zero again. So Ahmad, are you able to talk now?
Hello.
Oh,
Can you
perfect.
hear me? Good morning, everyone. How are you doing?
Yeah,
No
good,
problem.
thanks, Ahmed. I think we have discussed most of the points already. So from a Middle East perspective, if you could quickly take us through some of the regulatory changes in the IP world, as well as some of the commercial and compliance angles which corporates normally would want to follow given the situation. These are the 2 points that we covered, so your insights would be useful. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me start by saying, to focus a little bit on the United Arab Emirates, maybe. As you know, the United Arab Emirates is in the GCC region. Normally, the UAE is kind of proactive in taking kind of steps. Now, if we are talking about the impact of COVID, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what my colleague have said and what you have said in the beginning of the session to be able to connect the dots. However, if I speak from the perspective of IP registration, I guess what changes have been made during COVID in order to cope with the situation? Is this the question? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yes, that's the one.
Okay. Now, of course, from the IP registration's perspective, similar measures have been taken in the UAE as have been taken in some other major jurisdictions, like the United States, for example. So the patent offices in the GCC in general, in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, and other countries as well, they've shown a lot of flexibility with respect, first of all, with respect to the procedures and the process, the deadlines. So they showed a lot of flexibility in order for the applicants to be able to apply for their patent applications to cope with the deadlines. Until now, we see even applicants coming from other countries like the United States, for example, still are facing a lot of delays with their formalities to go to the legalization of documents, for example, and so on. So, the process, the way we feel it, is that the process in the overall outside in the US and other countries is still has some kind of difficulties. Didn't adjust well perfectly yet. So this, of course, impact when these applicants come to file in other countries, they impact them, and especially in the United Arab Emirates and other countries in the GCC where the formalities are higher, and these formalities also rely on steps or actions or activities which must be taken in these other foreign countries, such as I said, the legalization process, for example. So the patent offices have taken steps in order to cope with these measures. With respect to the filings, we've witnessed in the United Arab Emirates an increase in the volume of filings, and this is correct for trademark. It's correct for patents. So there was an increase in terms of patent filings in the United Arab Emirates, in terms of trademark filings in the United Arab Emirates, and I think this is the situation is also true in front of WIPO. I've reviewed the statistics a little bit, which were published by WIPO, and there is a good increase in terms of patent filings of PCT applications which are filed since the COVID, and it's a notable increase, which now this is something which needs a little bit the reasons behind this increase. I believe it's related to all these new industries or the emerging companies and the emerging industries which benefited from this COVID-19 wave, as I mentioned. And the COVID-19 wave, yes, it affected negatively a lot of companies and industries, but on the other side, it affected very positively other industries and other companies. So, I would say the abandonment, we've seen some abandonment of applications in some industries. And if I connect this to now, the United Arab Emirates, for example, did not publish statistics about abandonment. However, the United States Patent and Trademark Office did, and it showed that there is a notable increase in the volume or on the number of abandoned patent applications, which rise and which increased in a notable manner in the United States with respect to already filed applications. And however, in contrast, there was an kind of increase of number of patent applications also filed in the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So there's abandonment with the increase of abandoned applications with respect to existing applications. However, an increase in terms of the number of patent applications new patent applications filed. And this, I believe, it explains that the transformation in terms of priority for companies. There is a transformation which happened, and this transformation, I think it's too early to understand everything about this transformation. All what we can do is to give it a little bit of analysis. I believe there's a transformation in the industry, okay, and an economic transformation, of course, which impacted some industries negatively and impacted some others positively. The online industry, for example, was impacted very positively. The video streamline industry has been impacted very positively. The food and beverage industry was impacted positively. the pharma and healthcare industry was impacted positively. So for sure, we've seen from my experience, the number of patent applications in these industries has increased. We haven't faced in the United Arab Emirates and decrease in terms of filing of patent applications. So this is can confirm from my experience and what we've seen from our clients, as well as from the statistics of the UAE patent office as well.
Sure. I think thanks for that, Ahmad. So, I'm very mindful of the time. So, we'll quickly jump into, the last final point. So, request you both gentlemen to, sort of give us your inputs on the future of where we are today, right? Because, like both of you have spoken, there have been impacts on several, areas as far as IP is concerned. So what is it that the world can expect in terms of the near future, given that COVID-19 is here to stay? And quickly also touch upon what is it that one needs to do, in order to overcome the new challenges. And, quickly, just a minute from both of you would suffice. Thank you.
Sure. One final point I would like to make is don't go for quantity, but go for quality, particularly for patents. China has done an experiment in the last 10 years by providing patent application subsidies to increase the number of patents Chinese companies obtain. And it has finally decided to come to a stop. The reasons they have not said why, but according to my own observation, is because this quantity approach has proven to be not working. Not working very well, at least. Yes, the number is up, but there are too many rubbish coming out from there, and they have decided, okay, that's just a waste of money. That's by the Chinese government. Think about that. If you're a company and you go into an area like this, that means you have wasted a lot of your precious resources, and that is something that you may wish to avoid. Other than that, is that, well, just try to keep things as normal as much as you can, even though COVID is around, making us very inconvenient. But these days will end, like it or not. And then it comes back to what I said before. Go back to the basics.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. Ahmad, over to you.
Yes. We've seen from this COVID pandemic, we've seen, as I mentioned, a big transformation. And this is only the iceberg, what we've seen so far. So I believe that in the next couple of years, we'll see some major transformation in the industries. As I mentioned, some industries will be disrupted, some others will be impacted very positively. From the IP perspective, that I believe the patent system needs to be updated. The governments need to have a closer look on the patent system, on the reach of patent protection, and if our patent laws are still applicable for the new industries and the new technologies which are emerging. We know very well that patents work for, yes, online technologies and digital technologies, but not very efficiently, honestly. And this is because the patent system from the beginning, it was more about, to protect physical products. Now we are in another era today. We are in the digital era today. Isn't time for the patent system to be updated, to be able to reach more online technologies in a more flexible manner, in a more comfortable manner, in a more predictable manner? So this is an invitation to maybe to have a closer look on the patent system, and maybe an update is indeed required in order to ensure more appropriate protection of inventions and innovations in these emerging technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with both of you, Toby and Ahmed. And I think, from a conclusion standpoint, the only other, 2 cents worth advice that I can give the participants is that, I mean, it's just not IP, right? It's also the other allied areas, which you need to be compliant on. For example, data protection is, one such thing, and any other local laws which actually complement or stand by your IP laws as well. So, please do not forget these things in particular, because these are the ones which are going to help you build a robust IP portfolio. So, compliance means not just IP compliance, but compliance from an overall standpoint, right? So, this is how you can sort of protect your business, your IP, and also in the long run, reap the benefits of being compliant. So I think with that, I would like to conclude this session, and I can't thank Toby and Ahmed, and as well as the IPR Gorilla for organizing this. And I really hope that all the participants learned something, because I certainly learned a lot. If there are any questions, we are happy to take them. Else, over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Smitha, for the wonderful words. So, audience, do we have any questions? You can write down on the chat box on the on your right, and you can also come online and join face to face to ask questions from them directly. So, do we have like? Can I have a one-liner from each one of you to conclude this session? So we can start with Toby.
Stay safe and stay healthy.
All right. Same to you, Toby, and Ahmed.
First, I would like to thank, of course, the conference organizers and yourselves for organizing this every year. And I'm very impressed by, yes, we continue to have, I'm very impressed by how you adjusted yourself quickly to online platforms and such things. And, and I think this is an excellent example for everyone to follow. And this is where I think things are leading in the future. Thank you very much for this opportunity again.
Absolutely. Smitha, any takeaway words for this particular session?
Yeah, but I mean, this is the new normal. We have learned a lot, and I'm sure there are much more changes and developments which would take place in the near future. So let's be prepared. But, like Toby said, I'd like to repeat, let's not forget the basics, and let's also try and be compliant, because, these basics and compliance would give a good business, would be a good business strategy for all the businesses going forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you to key panelists and speakers joining in for this wonderful session, and thanks Ahmed for making up. And we were struggling to get you into the session, so thank you so much for cooperating. And participants, do we have any questions? So you can, I'm just repeating again, you can write on the chat box on your right, or you can join them face to face and talk to them directly. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Toby, Smitha, Ahmed, for joining in today. So thank you so much. And thanks to everyone, and looking forward to see you there.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye all.